Well, welcome everyone. We are going to get started at this point. For though most of you know me at this point, this is our 9th fundraiser of the year. So most of you know me, but for those of you who don't, I'm Lisa Herrick, and I started 31st Street in my living room on 31st Street in Washington, D.C., hence our name, shortly after Trump was elected. And I had no idea that 8 years later, I would still be welcoming people to fundraisers. But tonight, our fundraiser is for Arizona. We have a slate of wonderful candidates that we are supporting. And a little bit later, you're going to hear from two of them, Matias Rosales and Stephanie Simacek. So that will be a little bit later. And you'll also hear from Jim, as you usually do, about the state of things. Before I forget, I want to thank all of our co-hosts tonight. We cannot do these fundraisers without co-hosts. That is our model: networking, stretching out, asking people we know to help. And all of the co-hosts have agreed to invite their networks. So I want to thank all the co-hosts. I think we have a slide of them. And there they are. So thank you very, very much, everybody, for jumping in and inviting folks. We have 117 people here, so you've done a great job inviting your networks, and we really appreciate it. Our goal tonight is $240,000, so we need every single person that we can get, because that's a lot of money, but these candidates really need the funds. I'm not going to do a long intro. And actually, my little intro of inspiration is also my intro to our guest speaker tonight, Jessica Craven. Back when 31st Street started, shortly after Trump was elected, so many of us really were experiencing mostly two emotions, I think: helplessness and confusion. Just so many of us just felt like we had no idea what to do. It felt like a crisis, and it felt like action was needed, but we literally had no idea what action to take that would be effective and get us anywhere. Jessica was one person who strapped on her activism boots, so to speak, and she decided to lead the way towards activism that would be effective. And she created a daily newsletter called Chop Wood, Carry Water, which has turned into a Substack and a podcast. And she speaks all over the country. And really the idea of it is just to provide a list of actions that people could choose to take each day that would be effective in protecting our democracy in some way. And she's continued to do that over the last almost 8 years. And she's done so much else to support grassroots groups and spread the word and really guide people who had never before been political. I had never been political before inviting 30 people to my living room, and I had no idea what to do. And Jessica's back then, it was just a newsletter, was really one of the most inspiring things that I latched onto, because it gave us an idea of what to do. So I'm really pleased to have Jessica Craven here tonight. She's going to speak with us as our guest, and then we're going to move on with the rest of our program. Jessica?
Thank you, Lisa. Okay, let's see, how long, I'm so sorry I was messaging Jim, but he didn't see my message. How long would you like me to speak? About just 5 minutes? Is that okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay,
Yep.
Thank you. Hi, Jim. Thank you for asking me to be here. And hi, everybody. It's very, very nice to see such a huge group here raising money for state legislatures. So I'm Jessica Craven. I know a lot of you, but I don't know all of you. And I do have a Substack. And I don't actually have a podcast anymore. I stopped that. But that's okay. It's in one of my bios, and I can't figure out which one. But no more podcasts. But I do a lot of work full time, 6 days a week, putting out a political actions newsletter and also creating political content for TikTok, believe it or not, and other social media, because that's where people are getting their information. And for a long time, I also taught a webinar, and still do if anyone wants it, called Activism 101. That was just to teach people basic ways that they could help win. I think I started it back in 2020. So it was for the 2020 election. Um, and then I did it again in 2022. And I say all of that not because you're really interested in my bio, but to say that one of the things that became a real centerpiece of my Activism 101 workshop, and that is also a huge centerpiece of my political content that I make for TikTok, stuff I put in my newsletter, is raising money for state legislatures. In fact, the sort of most popular section of my Activism 101 workshop was the section in the middle where I talked about strategic giving. And then I showed a little video by Melissa Walker over at the States Project. And it was about why state legislatures were so important. And, you know, when we all started getting into this, when we all sort of, after the Trump shock, many of us started getting involved. I know I can speak for myself that I really did not understand the importance of state legislatures. And over the last unbelievably 8 years, I think many of us have come to understand the incredibly critical nature of funding down ballot races, in particular state level races. And at this point, I've become sort of a this is all I can talk about this for hours. Why it is so important, why we did not do it for such a long time, how much that hurt us, and how important it is that we reverse that trend now. When I see people giving money to state legislatures, I feel happy. When I hear that they are not funded where they need to be, I feel sad. And that is because I want us all to survive. I want a functioning democracy. I want my child, who's 14, to grow up with LGBTQ protections because they are non-binary. I want them to to grow up in a world where there is climate progress. I want them to grow up in a world where we have common sense gun laws, where we have a functioning democracy, voting rights, and all of that stuff. While lots of it is being addressed, oh, and abortion rights, a lot of that stuff, of course, is all being addressed on a federal level, but it is really being addressed at a state legislative level. And if we don't flip state legislative seats, we are going to keep seeing the horrible abortion bans and anti-LGBTQ laws and terrible climate laws and bad voter suppression laws, et cetera, that we are seeing across the country. The other thing that is amazing about funding state legislative races is I'm sure lots of you know this expression, but I know I didn't, the reverse coattails effect. And if you don't know what that means, it basically means that when we fund races down ballot, and here we're talking about funding races in Arizona, one of the most important battleground states we have, when we put money into those down ballot races, people will turn out for the down ballot races. They'll be excited about them because they probably met the candidate at the door, which they're not going to meet Kamala Harris at the door, but they might meet their Arizona state legislative candidate at the door. They're going to get excited. They're going to say, I really like that Stephanie or that whoever, and they're going to go out and vote for her. And of course, while they're there, they will vote all the way up the ballot. But if someone comes to the door and knocks on the door for Kamala Harris, they might go out and vote for Kamala Harris, but they don't really have state legislative races in their head. And as we know, particularly on the left, we have a terrible problem with something called ballot drop-off, which is when people on the left vote at the top of the ticket and then leave the rest blank. Because people on the left, for some reason, believe that if we don't perfectly know every single candidate inside and out, we should just not vote. Whereas people on the right just vote straight ticket, whether they know anything about the races or not. So backing up, if Stephanie has gone to the doors or the other wonderful candidate who's here and talked to these people, they're going to go vote for her. They're going to vote up ticket. The opposite does not necessarily happen. So when we get people out at a state legislative level, and there have been studies done on this, we are increasing turnout at the top of the ticket by somewhere between 1.5% and 3.5%. That is huge. And so by giving money to this down ballot race, it is exactly the same as giving money to the top of the ticket, but you're also making sure that we flip the state legislature in Arizona, which we are one seat in each chamber away from doing, and which will protect that state on a number of different fronts and make all of our lives better across the board. So I think that is more than enough out of me, but I can't tell you when people say strategically, where's the best place for me to give my money? Right now, I would say more than almost anywhere else, state legislative races in battleground states. It is a twofer. You're going to get that state legislature, and you're also going to get top of ticket everything in between. And here we are raising money for a state legislative race and for two great candidates in a battleground state. Please give as much as you possibly can, and maybe even a little bit more, because this is really where the rubber meets the road, and it could not matter more. So thank you for listening to me. I'm so excited to be here. I can't wait to hear from these great candidates. And that's enough out of me. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming, and thank you for packing all of that inspiration into 5 minutes. That was perfect. And now Jim Shelton, our analyst and strategist.
Right. Yeah, I'm Jim Shelton, the political analyst, and that was so terrific. I'm going to try to reinforce a lot of what Jessica said and round out and expand on it, but I can't. She's a hard act to follow. Let's put it that way. But I'll do my best. Okay. So hopefully people can see that. All right, most of you know us, and I'm not going to dwell on this, but just to make the point that we do work very hard to find good investments for you. Often high leverage opportunities. We sort of scan the sort of lower areas in a way of our ecosystem to look for good things. We sometimes call it zigging when other people are zagging, and state legislatures are a great example of that in general. All right, so I'm sorry if this is duplicative to some extent, all the things Jessica said for the citizens directly in those states, but also there are regional things. And I want to dwell on that particularly. And Arizona, water, very important, a regional problem. We get a lot of our vegetables from Arizona, so let's not forget that. All the election stuff that Jessica mentioned. Just one other thing to mention also. This is a lot of where our future candidates up ballot come from. So maybe one of these people that we're going to see tonight, maybe there'll be or one of the other 6 that we're supporting. Barack Obama was a state senator, and 4 years later, he was the president of the United States. So that it can work that way sometimes. And then lastly, the reverse coattail effect, which I'm going to go into in considerable detail. All right, just on the legislative side, a little bit of, I love data, so bear with me. State legislatures that are red have been more respected. This is from the Brennan Center. This is what they do. Notice Arizona has been kind of in the red with their legislature. They've been having more restrictive laws. Where we've had great expansion like Michigan and Virginia, vast improvement. Okay, and also Jessica mentioned this, that we lost an incredible number of legislature seats between 2010 and 2016, almost 1,000 seats. Now, when you think we got 50 states, you can figure out that's an average of about 20 seats per state. That's a lot. But we have been making our way back in some instances, but I want to show you just how sort of fragile in a way, but also exquisite it can be when you can get things that go your way. So for example, in Michigan, where we've seen really like a spring of all kinds of great things happening with their trifecta, those 2 legislature chambers that were won in 2022, where they only have a 1-seat majority, they were won by 400 votes each. Likewise, in Pennsylvania, even more so. Well, they only had 1 chamber in Pennsylvania, but the one that is the 1-seat majority was won by 67 votes. And in Tim Walz's Minnesota, which has also had its spring, their Democratic trifecta from the Senate race was won by only 189 votes. Now, I can't say it's necessarily all that possible to target all that precisely, but it just shows you what a little bit of vote changes can make in our country, actually. And also money goes so much farther. There are billions of dollars being spent on the presidential race and on the Senate races, for example. Nothing like that in what we're getting in our legislature races in Arizona. And the money that we're going to be supporting these candidates with will really move the needle for them. So we've done this in 5 states already. Now in Arizona, it just takes 1 seat in each chamber to flip that chamber to get to a trifecta. But then there's also the up ballot arena, which is so important. Now, what is that up ballot arena? Well, and I may not even have all of it here, but the 11 precious electoral votes that Arizona has, the US Senate, 2 very crucial US House seats, recognizing that we only need 5 seats flip in the US House to win to get the majority in the House. A very important ballot initiative on abortion and other things. And here's one I bet almost nobody knows, and it's not trivial. And it's actually not even down up ballot. It's sort of side ballot, which is Maricopa County, which has 61% of Arizona's population, is electing all of its county supervisors this year. And you may remember the vote certification mess in Maricopa County. So if we don't win those, flip some of those seats, we'll continue to have some problems along that line. Okay, so now switching to the all-important Electoral College. What I've got here is an example of a pretty likely scenario, positive, that we win all of the blue wall, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota. And I haven't given us the seat in the vote in Nebraska yet, but that takes us to 269. I think things are looking better now that they're not going to be able to take away the possibility of us winning that electoral vote, but that only gets us to 270. And if you see what I've got over here on the side here, we really need to win decisively. We need, it's going to be a lot of protest in any case, but if we win decisively in the Electoral College, we'll have a much better shot and we'll have a much better mandate. And here's the thing, Trump and his people, they are gunning for Pennsylvania. That's why it's not actually our #1 priority, and we've done a lot for Pennsylvania. I don't think Georgia, there's not much else here in this sort of gray, yellow, brown box. Georgia, I'm not that optimistic. North Carolina, I think we could win. But if we lose Pennsylvania, we pretty much got to have North Carolina and Arizona. We really need Arizona as some backup potential. So anyway, that's why all of this is so important. All right, now that brings us to our 5 great candidates, 2 of which we're going to hear from in a minute. And I say great because we go to a lot of trouble to pick out these folks. We talk to really key informants, including the caucus in Arizona, which is called the ADLCC, and other key informants. And we interview every one of these people, and we interview most of their campaign managers. And I can tell you they are a really solid bunch, and we really owe them a debt of gratitude to be willing to take this on. A lot of these are otherwise, they're not politicians by, career or something like that. They're taking this on to do this for us. And so we're trying to raise $30,000 each for these people, which actually is enough for them to move the needle. And what I like to say to them is, we're raising money for you so you don't have to spend a lot of time on the phone trying to raise money, and you can spend your time out campaigning and knocking on doors. And to a person, they always say, we love that because we like knocking doors and we like talking to voters. And in fact, that's why you get a very strong updraft or reverse coattail effect that Jessica was talking about. So one example, just to show you how important this up ballot thing, this phenomenon is in Arizona. So we have two of our candidates who are actually within one very important U.S. congressional district, Congressional District 1, and then that is helps the statewide candidates. So both of these candidates are helping all this, but there's more, because on the other side, we have three candidates, Seaman, father and daughter, in the same district running for different offices. They're in yet another key congressional district, which also helps the statewide candidate. So it's the up ballot in reverse coattails in spades. So again, what are we trying to do? We're trying to raise $240,000, which is $30,000 each for them. We asking for contributions in the chat. And with that, I'm just going to go ahead and turn it over to Matias.
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you, Jim. Good afternoon, everybody. Am I coming in clear?
Yes.
Yes. My name is Matias Rosales. I'm running for House Representative for District 23 here in the great state of Arizona. I'm coming from a background of serving on my local community for the city of San Luis, Arizona. Been council member for the past 12 years. Been married for going on 30 years next year, so I better not forget that or my wife's gonna get mad at me, but 30-year anniversary will be next year. I have 4 beautiful kids. My oldest is 25, and he's decided to follow in my footsteps as well, and he'll be running for city council here locally. He says he wants to also serve the community that we live in, he was raised in, and I wanted to continue to serve. And a couple years ago, working together at the state legislature, I learned, like Jim says, the importance of what we could do at the state level. And that's why this time around, I decided to run at the state level to bring some more funding to our very our needed communities. My district is rural in its nature. Sunday, I went door knocking to different parts of the district, and I decided to go travel the whole district. I took my 2 sons and a couple of volunteers with me. We put up some signs in some parts of the districts and talked to people as we traveled. And we left at 6 in the morning and came back at 1 in the morning. It was an 18-hour drive to cover the whole district. So what you guys are doing here, it's a great support system to allow us to continue to door knock. We've been hitting here locally in the communities with the volunteers on weekends, afternoons, door knocking and making sure that they know that we're here and how important it is for the seat to be won by our state, so our governor could go ahead and make some differences. There's some crazy propositions out there that are on the ballot this year, and without the extra support on the Democratic side, some of those laws will be passed, and they're there to hurt voters, to keep people from being able to register and cast their vote, and also to control the state in a negative fashion, in my opinion. I'm not sure if you guys have some questions. That's a little bit about myself, and feel free to ask any questions.
Thank you so much. We're actually going to hold questions until after we have all our speakers. So if you can stick with us, we would love that, because I think there will be questions coming to you. But thank you so much for being here. I know you're probably very, very busy, but thanks for taking the time. And now we're going to hear from Stephanie Simacek, the other candidate on our slate.
My name is Stephanie Simacek. I'm running for the state house seat in our very competitive district, legislative district 2. And my hope is that I will be our next Democratic representative. We have 1 seat that we are holding here. Our district does something called a single shot vote. So we are only running 1 Democrat. Hopefully one day we'll be able to run 2. But for now, that is how we hope to, what has worked in the past and what we hoped will continue. So just a little bit about me. I'm running because I'm very passionate about improving our public schools here in Arizona, protecting reproductive freedom for all women. I'm also concerned about affordable housing in our communities. And we really certainly cannot forget about the importance of protecting our water and our climate's future. As a teacher, one of the reasons I run is because I'm a teacher, and I know that our teachers in our schools are struggling here in Arizona with overcrowded classrooms, underfunded programs, and so much more. And 2 years ago, when I saw a school board member creating what I would call unproductive havoc and spreading lies about other board members and our superintendent, rather than focusing on education and student outcomes, I knew at that point that it was time that I get involved. So I ran for and now am a member of the Deer Valley Unified School District Governing Board. So in this role, I am working with variety of board members. We would like to think that serving on the school board is a nonpartisan position, but we've also seen that over the years, it has become very partisan. And with that, I was a little nervous when I was elected about coming on, and I thought they were going to eat me alive based off of the election results that came in. And to my surprise, that was not the case. Ended up working, I still am working with a opposite of the aisle gentleman who has been phenomenal. What we do is we focus on what we have in common and what our goals are. And when we focus on the students, we focus on the teachers, and that being the ultimate goal, we can actually accomplish a lot. So leaving out all that other loud stuff that seems to make the news, that's not exactly happening. We have been able to provide teacher salary raises. We've been able to improve curriculum and budgetary matters. Just really want to remove that chaos from our school board and work for our students and our teachers and our families. So like I said, I love being a part of the school board, but there is so much to be done here in Arizona for public education. So what we know here, and this is around the country, that public education is really an economic issue, and our properly funded and quality schools create well-educated students who are prepared for our workforce. And we also know that a well-educated workforce will attract new business. We're seeing a lot of growth here. We have a chip factory being built just north of me.
Skip that question.
And it's being, so we're seeing a huge expansion of growth, but we also are seeing a lot of job opportunities. So a strong public education system is not just an education issue. It is an economic issue for our community and our state. And I wanted to share an example of something that's going on here in Arizona that you may or may not be aware of. But I want to use it as an example of why we need to properly fund education, and there are solutions here to do so. So I want to use the example of Arizona's universal ESA voucher system. This is a voucher system that was originally created for families with high needs students, special needs whose needs were not being met at the public school setting. So what the voucher program came out, and it provided this $7,000 to $12,000 a year in place of to place student to be able to receive services outside of the district. So they would be removed from the public education system, but they could have an in-home teacher, private tutor, they could receive speech services and all those kinds of things. So that's what that money was intended to be for. But it quickly turned into a program where any parent could receive money from the state now. So now we call it a universal voucher system. And we see basically two things happening. Well, actually three. I'm going to start with one that we see as it was marketed to Arizonans as a way to support low-income housing, low-income students. This was supposed to provide them with money so that they could thrive and go to any school they wanted. And what we're seeing is that families who do use this voucher money from the state were already planning on enrolling their students into private schools if they hadn't already. And so we call this welfare for the wealthy, because they are taking this money from the state. They were planning on going to a private school anyway, and it's just a coupon for them, basically. We also see families that are claimed to be homeschool families that are taking yes, sorry. That they're taking the money away and frivolously spending it. So they're using it on things like espresso machines and because they want their child to be a barista, or they are using them to buy recreational vehicles and saying they're teaching them how to drive. So we also have seen lately, in the last couple of days ago, a report came out that said that ESA families of voucher money are sitting on over $360 million of cash. So this is money that is not like a use it or lose it thing. They can literally collect it year after year after year and decide whatever they're going to do for it. Because right now the program has no transparency or accountability. So whereas our public schools are required to prove everything through where every penny goes, where what our state testing scores are, everything has to be proved for us to receive any sort of funding from the state. These programs that are receiving ESA voucher money, they don't even have to fingerprint their teachers. So at a private school, those teachers can just be hired without fingerprint background checks. They also don't have to account where any of the money goes. So at minimum, Arizona truly needs to see accountability and transparency in these ESA vouchers. It's just the beginning, but my thought of improving this, and our governor presented this the beginning of the year at the State of the State, that if we put accountability and transparency out there, I think we'll find that there will be a natural, private schools aren't going to want to have to account for every single penny being spent. And so they might not accept vouchers anymore. This is kind of my idea of how things could work. The other thing to point out about our voucher program is that there is no source of where that money comes from. So we had a surplus here in Arizona a couple of years ago, and now we're in a major deficit again. So it's really scary, and it's draining. It's literally draining our state. So that's an example for that. And then, I have a mother. I'm a mother of 2 wonderful daughters. And then this idea that my daughters now have fewer rights than I do about making decisions for their bodies is unacceptable. A woman's decisions belong with her and her doctor. Politicians do not belong in the exam room with her. And that is what we're seeing right now. I've marched down at the Capitol for it, and something I'm extremely passionate. I've taken my girls with me, and I want them to know that they can grow up in a safe country where they can make their own personal choices about their health care. Hopefully I'm not going on too long. And, I want to say that when I knock on doors, which is pretty much all I do every day now, I get to hear from that the cost of living from so many of our community members is really what keeps them up at night. We're experiencing so much growth here, and the rent has skyrocketed and homes have skyrocketed, literally doubled within the last 5 years. And I really want to work on fighting for affordable housing and, making sure we have rates that families can afford and programs that they can use to be purchasing home if they are under a certain income. Because I really truly feel every Arizonan deserves to have a safe and a secure, affordable home. And then obviously here in Arizona, we are a desert. So I end up being very concerned about securing a sustainable water source so that our communities will exist for our children, for future generations. We have an opportunity to work with government agencies, businesses, nonprofits, even neighboring communities, to work together and develop these long-term solutions. Part of that includes a lot of conservation, sorry. And a lot of that includes coming up with alternative plans, which we have the ability to do. We have wonderful people in this community that are intelligent enough to come up with new ways and innovative ways. And the way I would kind of see that future is holding public forums and creating outreach programs and partnering with our local organizations so we can really focus on policies that encourage conservation and the sustainable water source. So, I just want to say I really appreciate your time today listening to Jessica talk about the importance of the legislative district. I come from being a teacher to a school board member and now living and breathing this process every single day of running for my community. And there's nowhere else I would rather be. I have found over the years that this is where I belong, and that's being of service to other people. Brings me pure joy, makes me feel like in a world where there is so much chaos and crazy, that I can do something about it. And at the end of the day, I might not have full control over who wins the presidential seat, but I have control over who can win this legislative seat and all the seats around our district. We are 1 seat away, our state. We are 1 seat away from a tie. We are 2 seats away from a majority. If we flip this, if we split it this year, we will have our trifecta with Governor Hobbs. She's a wonderful governor. Thank goodness she's had veto power, because I can't imagine where we would be without her. But we can do so much more. And so again, I want to thank you for having me on here tonight to share with you a little bit of vision about what I see for Arizona. And yeah, we can ask questions or
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you so much. Also, just wonderful information. And I love your enthusiasm, and you're doing two jobs at the same time, taking care of your daughter. So thank you so
Yeah.
much for being here.
Sorry about that.
We're going to have questions and answers very shortly. But before we get there, I'm going to turn this over to our fundraising chair, Mary Pence, and her husband, Dan. Mary.
Good evening. So we are Dan and Mary Pence, and we are part of the leadership team of 31st Street. And so Dan, at this moment, just weeks away from the election, and having been in this fight, and I'm going to call it a fight, for 7 years, what is it that keeps you centered?
Centering starts with me when I was commissioned as an officer in the United States Navy, and I swore an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. No one has relieved me of that obligation so far. So that's where my respect and commitment comes from initially. In addition, the future for our children, our two wonderful children and our grandchildren, means the world to me, and I want them to have a future based on equality and justice under the law.
And so can you lift up just one or two things that inspired you about these two candidates that we just heard from?
Well, just listening to them, I am so confident that they will be working in their districts respectively to get out the vote. And based on what I just heard, I think they're going to be very successful. Getting out the vote is what's key all the way up the chain to us being successful. So my heart just goes out to them to go for it.
And so we've talked about it, and we've made a decision as to how much we're going to contribute to the $240,000 goal, and how much are we contributing to these 8 state legislature candidates.
We're contributing $5,000.
And so I just want to say that I know not everyone on this call has the ability to contribute $5,000, but I'd like to leave you with this thought. If you're about to contribute, or maybe if you're even contributing for the second time, this is the moment to dig deep. If we don't live in a swing state or are within driving distance of a swing state, this is the way we can make a difference. And so I'm asking that you each allow space in your hearts to also be inspired by these candidates. You know, for myself, it's been a long, hard road since the guy with the orange hair was elected. I truly believe that history will show that we in the grassroots organizations made all the difference in the outcome of this election. I believe that the $240,000 that we are raising for these 8 candidates is part of that making a difference. So please join Dan and me in digging deep to help us reach the goal of $30,000 for each one of these carefully vetted candidates. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Mary and Dan. I am Peter Hansen, also one of the leadership team here of 31st Street, and I get to try and facilitate a little Q&A. So Matias, I thought I'd send a question to you first. What are you hearing when you're knocking doors? What's the issues that's on the top of voters' minds?
Abortion is one of the top of mind items here local in our community, the culture of it. Voter suppression. 2 years ago, we had a bad experience here in our communities where someone actually got prosecuted for having some of their relatives ballots, and they used her as a guinea pig. So a lot of the voters are scared. That happened 4 years ago, but 2 years ago, a lot of the voters were scared on talking to people when you knocked on your doors because they thought they would get in trouble just by talking. So now they're coming back and answering the doors, and it's nice when they see my face because I've been here in the community for 12 years, and so they know me, so they have that trust. Abortions, like I said, I have a 20-year-old daughter as well, and that's a hot topic with her and her age group as well. And then education, as Stephanie was mentioning, education is not equal across the state, unfortunately, especially in our rural communities. We don't have the same type of campuses or tools that are offered here in our rural community that you would see in other parts of the state. That could be go to Scottsdale, Paradise Valley, and so forth. My community, the majority of my district is agricultural. Jim mentioned it earlier, we provide 95% of the lettuce to the United States in our season. So a lot of our agriculture community is underserved in regards to to items that they need to be able to provide their families. So that would be some of the issues, the economic stability, feeling that, education, and then the pro-choice.
Okay. And sort of a follow-up. I mean, you mentioned a lot of your district is rural, which makes door knocking a challenge, a lot of driving between houses and so on. Is there anything you think you're doing differently than some of the urban candidates?
Yeah,
to make that feasible?
Yeah, we're going hard on here in our community. Again, going back to the type of community we have, radio is still a thing. A lot of our voters don't use podcasts or don't use mainstream, the new technology out there, or satellite in their car. So they still listen to good old-fashioned radio. Especially the Yuma area. We border San Luis, Arizona to San Luis, Sonora, so we get the radio stations on both sides, so people listen to the Mexican radio stations as well as they do over here. So we're focusing on doing some radio ad, the local newspapers, because believe it or not, people here in my community still read the newspapers. They don't get everything online. And that's not only true for the Yuma area, but that's also true for other parts of my district, which is, for example, Ajo, which is another border community that is about 2.5 hours east of my community. And then you go down to the Tucson area, which has a little bit more metro area, but the district falls in predominantly Hispanic community, where they are still connected to the old ways of getting their data and their information. So door knocking, when we're out there, last weekend when we were out there, people like to have the conversations, they like to ask the questions, and they like to see a face to the candidate, and that builds that trust. And the family culture is very deep, so that means that when grandma likes you or mom and dad likes you, the kids are going to follow, their recommendation. So that is true throughout the whole district. My northern part of the district, which would be the Goodyear part, that is a little bit more modern, and out there we're doing some of the new stuff like the social media. We're doing billboards, door knocking as well. We have a big event coming up this Sunday with my co-candidate Mariana Sandoval. So we're hitting every means of getting our information out there and letting the voters know how important it is for this district to turn. As Stephanie mentioned, we need 2 seats, 1 to tie and 1 to win. Battleground district, so we're reminding people how important it is.
Thanks. Stephanie, back to you. How do you convince people that Democrats will serve public education better than their Republican-led majority is doing right now?
And that mute button. Sorry. I think a huge part is to look back in history over the last even 5 to 10 years of where Arizona has gone. I mean, teachers, until Red for Ed, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Red for Ed, but it was a national event that was held, and I took part in it. I was teaching at the time. Teachers had not had a raise in 2008. So under the current majority that we have right now, we have continued to watch schools suffer over and over and over. And when we had the opportunity, when the current majority had the opportunity, with a surplus, instead of giving that money to public education, they decided to pass it out to everybody in the legislative, holding a seat. Some people used $15 million for a Prescott rodeo. They just really just whatever project they wanted to do. So that alone needs to be brought out, and we have to have those conversations, and those conversations are had at the door. So there is a solution that's actually not, I mean, it's very complicated, but it's not at the same time. And that solution is to put accountability and transparency into the ESA voucher program. And when I talk to people whose children are on the voucher program, because I do get this at the door, what is your thoughts on vouchers? I really just try to share with them that if my tax dollars are funding public education that is required to do all of these things to prove their worth, to receive any penny, and that this money could just be handed out without any accountability or transparency, aren't you worried of where your tax dollars are going? Aren't you worried that you're funding someone's dune buggy down the road? A lady literally is suing the state right now, the Department of Education, because she purchased 2 dune buggies, and they're finally starting to step in a little bit and put some control over what can be purchased. And so she's suing back. So it's those kinds of things, just really having conversations about every single child in the state of Arizona, no matter what zip code they live in, deserves the right to a wonderful public education. We do have school choice here too. I just want to jump into that because I get some pushbacks from my opponents saying that I don't believe in school choice, and that's absolutely not true. In the state of Arizona, you can actually send your child to any school you want. You just have to be able to drive them there if they're not in your home school district. But you can send your child anywhere, and you can still send them to private schools. But we need to be making sure that that money is being accounted for.
Yep, great, thank you. Matias, back to you. You mentioned your daughter being very concerned about bodily autonomy as an issue. What's your sense, and what do you hear through her about the 18 to 30-year-old demographic and how engaged they are?
It's actually made her more active. I mean, this is her first time being able to actually vote, because last time she wasn't 18 yet, but it's made her come out, and she's out there helping me on the weekends, and her friends are too as well. It's brought the political realm to their age group, but we're still seeing that and I say that because for women in that age, that is what's bringing them out. But we're having the issue with the men, getting that 18 to 30-year-old person to come out and vote. We're still having a hard time there. They're busy with life and their afternoon activities, but we have seen that in the younger women's pool. My daughter works at a local school, and talking there with she's a teacher's assistant while she's going to college. So she tells me the conversations they have on campus when she goes to class, and also with her coworkers at school. So it has brought them out, and it's a very important subject. And we hear both sides of it. I mean, we hear the opposition, and we hear the pro-choice, but we're seeing more, and that's where we're at. We see more of the pro-choice, and it should be between the patient and their doctor. It has nothing to do with us, with any lawmakers or anything, and we need just to make sure that we get the seat so we stop this stuff happening at the state level.
Great, thank you. Jessica, I wanted to come back to you for one question here. I mean, you've been preaching about the need to focus on state house races. Do you see people, is it difficult to get people to make the connection between these races and what will occur in redistricting in 2030?
I don't as much as I would like to, but it is something to really start to talk about. I mean, I think people are very galvanized about down ballot races, but I'm not sure they've connected it to redistricting yet. Although I think we are seeing a greater awareness of the importance of fair maps. And you can see what's happening in Ohio, where they're having this ballot measure to fix their maps. We saw it in Wisconsin. So I think the awareness is growing, but it's a very good idea to draw the line between those two things And I have not done that as much as I should, and I'm going to because of what you just asked, and that's a very good idea.
Okay, yeah, well, we're all seeing the effects of the Republicans having done such a good job of it a few years ago. So it's incumbent upon us to strike back.
Absolutely. They were playing chess while we were playing checkers for a
Yeah.
very, very, very long time. As Melissa Walker always says, we were staring at the presidency while they were rigging the entire system right in front of our noses. So we have some catching up to do, but we are doing it. We can do it, and we will do it.
Okay, then a final question for each of our candidates, and just a very brief answer because we just have a couple of minutes left, is just anything specific that you're planning to use these funds for?
Well, we are doing, like I said, a lot of door knocking. So with that, we carry literature. Whether we can speak to them and have the conversation, we leave that with them, or we leave it at the door if they don't answer. And we're also working on digital ads. That's kind of what works around our area, as well as trying to continue to get out mailers that can show voters what I stand for. I am actually running with Judy Schwiebert, who currently has this seat that I'm in, and she's moving over to run for the Senate. So we kind of run as a team, and we do some joint mailers together to get that information out there to our voters. The unique thing about LD2 is that we are about a third independent, a third Democrat, and a third Republican. So all of those independents we need to be having a conversation with, or at least touching to some degree, because those are the ones who will help us hold this seat.
Great, thank you. And Matias, same thing for you. Any more radio ads or what?
Yes, we need to increase our radio ad commercials, and also to get to that gap that we're seeing with the 18 to the 30-year-old throughout the whole district. You know, social media, digital ads. You know, making sure we're focusing on what they're on the platforms that they are. Like I mentioned earlier, my 25-year-old, he doesn't watch regular TV. He's on YouTube and those commercials. So we want to focus on them and making them the 15 seconds to make sure that they at least watch the 15 seconds that's required. But radio ad for the older generation, and then do the digital ad to get in the younger generation, and then continue the door knocking. I just ordered today I requested an estimate today for another 7,000 to 10,000 flyers that we're passing out door to door. This will be my fourth run of 10,000. And our area ballots come out October 9th. So we are working hard from here to October 9th to make sure that when those ballots get mailed out on the 9th, they arrive around the 14th to people's houses. We want to make sure that they have our information and they know about us and remember us. Most of my communities, like I mentioned, are rural. San Luis has the largest post office center in the United States. We don't get mail delivery in our 40,000 residents. Everybody has to go to the P.O. box. So we lose a lot of the print ad there because people pick up their mail and it goes straight into the trash can at the post center. So we have to make sure we're door knocking those communities and making sure they're hearing us on the radio.
Great, thank you. Yeah, Lisa will wrap up here in a minute, but a lot of us will stay on, and if our two candidates are able to stay on for another 15 minutes or so, there's a chance for a few more questions that we haven't quite gotten to yet. So if you can both hang around, that would be great. Meanwhile, Lisa, back to you.
I'm just going to close. We are so appreciative of your giving us this time and giving these candidates your time, and just giving the support to the efforts that we're throwing towards state legislatures. We only have one more fundraiser this year. It's October 10th. And that will be for an independent candidate running for the Senate in Nebraska. So look for our newsletters. We'll have a lot more information about that, but we really appreciate your participation tonight. And Jessica, Matias, Stephanie, thank you so, so much for giving us your time. So this ends our formal program. Thank you.